Shabbat Shalom. For this Shabbat marking Yom HaShoah, we are incredibly privileged to have with us tonight three guests, Norman Frajman, Rositta Kenigsberg, and Dr. Wilma Siegel. Norman, I'll start with you. When you speak to people about the story of your survival in the Shoah, what do you want us to never forget about your story?
Well, my story it's a story of a survivor. Now, what is my aim in life? I'm not going to be here forever, but the word has to go out. And young people of this generation who are so very perceptive, they're so very wonderful, and unlike other generations, with all due respect, and they must learn as to what we stood for, and just to be aware that history is capable of repetition. And God forbid, a million times, if there is anything like something that happened to us, it's unknown in the history of mankind. You know, we are miracles. Anyone who survived is a miracle. We all survived in different circumstances. You know, there were partisans, there were people who were hidden by righteous Gentiles that they deserve all the credit, those righteous Gentiles risking their lives to save a human being. Why did they do it? Because it was the right thing to do. Ali Wiesel said, you save a life, you save the world. And this is what we want to live by. We want to leave a legacy here for the younger generation. So my grandchildren do not have to live through the atrocities that we had witnessed in our lives. It is that.
Norman, you have a jacket there. Can you show it to us and tell us what this jacket is and what it's from?
Can you see it?
Yes.
The first thing I must make you aware of is this here, meaning that I did not have a name. I was dehumanized by then. All I did is had a number, and that's what I was known by. And forgive me, it's my telephone. Somebody's going to.
That's okay.
Now, again, now you see the Star of David here.
Yes.
The Germans, they had a ingenious idea. The yellow represents that we are Jewish. In my case, the red represents that I am a political prisoner. Never had anything to do with politics, but this is their format. Now, criminals had a green triangle. Homosexuals had a pink. Gypsies were black. And so all they had to do is look at your triangle and they knew exactly who you are or what you are. Now, this is a jacket that was given to me in 1944. I was in the concentration camp of Boca, and we were on the quarantine there because actually my life belonged to a company called HaShoah. They bought us in Majdanek, 3,000 of us. And the HaShoah was an ammunition factory. They were the third largest in the Reich. And you know, as the Allies were approaching, they inducted every able-bodied German into the armed forces and created a shortage in their economy. So they were forced to delve into concentration camps. And thanks to that, that I was bought by that company, I'm here to talk to you because I would not have been. And if I may stress why I'm saying it, because one of the worst days in the history of the Holocaust was on November the 3rd of 1943. What has happened on that day? Now, I was, when I left Majdanek, there were close to 18,000 people of the Jewish faith left. But they were surrounded with people. They brought industries out of Warsaw near in a camp called Travniki, Poniatowo, and the Flugplatz. And this was the time when there was unrest within the camps, that they really detonated one of the crematoriums in Auschwitz. There was a escape in Sobibor. There was unrest in the Warsaw Ghetto. And suddenly the Germans become very jittery. What is going to happen if the Jews are alive? And they designated an area code called Erntefest, translated it means harvest festival. And they took these innocent people, and there were 43,000 people murdered on that 1.5 days. And this you can look up on Wikipedia how it was. They took the battalion of policemen who were civilians actually in life out of Hanover and brought them in to be the shooters. And the captain said to them that we're going to kill children, we're going to kill grown-ups. Whoever does not want to participate, step out, there will be no repercussions. And you know what? 5% only step out. 95% did it. And their excuse afterwards, it is only hard at the beginning. Then shooting becomes a part of the statistics. We shoot, we kill. And this is one date that should be observed by a lot of people. I was taken out of Majdanek several weeks prior to that. And as I mentioned, with 3,000, and this is what permitted us to survive this tragedy.
Dr. Siegel, you had a whole career as a groundbreaking physician in New York, in the world of hospice care, in the world of AIDS care. And then you have painted in both when you were practicing and now in your retirement, survivors of the Holocaust, their children, their grandchildren, and now their great-grandchildren. And we've seen your images throughout our service tonight. How and why did you convey the biographies of the survivors and children of survivors like Rositta and their families who sit for you? How do you convey their biographies, Dr. Siegel?
The reason I did this was nobody in my family was in the Holocaust. I am the offspring of the pogroms, but we lived in a neighborhood that was completely anti-Semitic when I was a child. Across the street from where I lived was the head of the Bund Party, which was the Nazi party in America. And I had stones thrown at me and I was called Dirty Jew. My father at the Liberation brought me to the movies to see it. I was only 8 years old. And I turned to my father and I said, why couldn't I have done something about this? And so I carried some of my guilt through my life and some of the feelings of what I had experienced in anti-Semitism. And I felt it was so important to do this series. And I was fortunate to meet these wonderful people to help me to do the series. Now, what my portraits do are really what I think gives immortality to that individual. And I am hoping that their immortality is the writing message that I do, because I do both visual and narrative in my presentations for the series that I do. And I am very much against bigotry, and almost everything I do is against bigotry. I've done series of Muslim women in America, and I've done series on returning veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan. I've done many series on AIDS survivors. These are people that have all had some experience with bigotry. And this is what I care about. I care about human rights. And I believe my series expresses human rights. I want people to think about what is important about the other person. It is about empathy. It is not about me, it's about we.
Rositta, you occupy so many spaces on Yom HaShoah. You are a child of survivors, but you were born in a displaced persons camp yourself on European soil after the war. And you are also a Holocaust educator as head of the Holocaust Documentation and Education Center, where we at Temple Bethel have visited. So 100 years from now, with all those viewpoints that you have, 100 years from now, what do you want people to remember about the Holocaust?
First and foremost, I want them to remember there was a Holocaust. That's the most important. And second of all, I want them to remember, and Dr. Siegel and Norman both alluded to it, and this is the house I grew up in, that the Holocaust was not about only death and despair. The Holocaust was also about hope and life, reborn and redemption. And you mentioned that I was born in a DP camp. I will tell you that I had the privilege in the year 2000 of chairing the Millennium event for the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. That was such an incredible honor in all of the efforts that I have ever been asked or invited to do, because the one thing we realized early on, many survivors in second and third generation, was individuals really did not know what happened in 1945. They didn't realize that survivors did not go home and live happily ever after. There were no yellow ribbons around the old oak tree. There were no ticker tape parades. There was no home to go to. There was no family to go to. And they were interned once again in DP camps. But what happened in those DP camps that people don't know is that life was reborn. One of the most profound photographs that embolize that we had put up as our official photo of what happened was mothers pushing baby carriages, because few people know that the DP camp time, the largest baby boom in Jewish history, happened in the DP camps. Life was reborn once again. They started their schools, they started their families. This was going to be I would say, the defiance, the act of resistance. They were not going to give Hitler a posthumous victory all over again. And if we want to talk about survivors and life reborn, let's talk about their courage, their conviction. If it wasn't for Holocaust survivors, Yom HaShoah would not have become that motto that it is, where you hear never again, never again, never again. They are the ones that created the Yom HaShoah commemorations, that brought the institutions of Holocaust organizations into being. They understood first and foremost that Holocaust education must become a priority to everyone, regardless of race, color, creed, ethnicity, and on and on and on. And that's why probably the organization that I've been a part of for 41 years, the Holocaust Documentation Education Center, it took 10 years. Had anyone told us it would take 10 years to get Holocaust education mandated in the state of Florida, we might have thought twice, but education is key.